Hello, and welcome back to Something Starts Ringing Tarot. My name is Ryan, and today I created a new hashtag called Tarot Card Misfits. For this hashtag, I'm going to be showing you cards from 9 of my decks that, to me, they stand out as maybe not fitting with the rest of the deck, or maybe they feel like a different world than the rest of the deck. And some of these cards have actually swayed me away from grabbing these decks, but I want to kind of give them their own time in the spotlight in this video and try to reframe in my head and explain to myself as well as you guys why maybe these misfit cards actually add to the deck instead of take away from the deck. So I'm going to try to make this a positive hashtag as like highlighting these misfit cards, and I don't want this hashtag to be like negative or like questioning why the artist would make that choice, because obviously I don't know why the artist made any of these choices. So these are going to be my opinions on all of these different cards, but I hope to frame them in a positive light and kind of give the spotlight to these misfit cards instead of shying away from them like I typically do when I'm trying to decide which deck to use. So when I'm showing these cards, I want to be very clear that if you're looking for a new deck, or if you are considering certain decks and you hear one in this video, I want to be sure that I'm intentionally choosing cards that are not necessarily representative of the entire deck. So if you're interested at all in any of these decks, I encourage you to either watch some of my walkthroughs that I have, or look up the deck specifically and look at the rest of the cards as well, because this is intentionally the misfit cards that may not be representative of the deck in its entirety. And with that, I'm going to get into my cards. So the first deck, I went through a lot of my decks and chose some misfit cards. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the Shadowland Tarot, and this is the 10 of Cups from that deck. So this one kind of stands out because a lot of the cards in that deck have kind of like alien figures on them, or spooky creatures or ghosts, or what am I thinking, like a voodoo doll sort of vibe. They're very kind of shadowy, sketch drawn characters, but this card obviously does not have a main character on it. It does have the little crab, but this one stands out because it's just 10 cans of paint, it looks like, and the crab is using them or trying to use them to paint something. So it stands out from not having like a main figure, or kind of feels like a different part of the world than the rest of the deck. So I do like this card though very much, because it still has the rainbow vibe that you typically see on the 10 of Cups, or at least references the original Rider-Waite-Smith artwork with the rainbow colors. And I also like how them like flowing over and flowing into like towards the camera or towards the reader kind of shows that like it can like fulfill you, and all the colors can like paint great emotions, and you can like make great feelings out of a mixture of feelings. So typically this deck has kind of a shadowy aspect, but you can still read the 10 of Cups meaning in this card. So I really like that, even though it stands out as kind of a misfit card. The next deck I went through was the Spectrowhirl Tarot, and all of these decks will be in the description box below, and I'll try to provide links if I can find them. The first card that I wanted to talk about in this deck, the first misfit tarot card, is the Strength card. This is the only card in the deck that has a realistic animal face, or a realistic face at all. There are a couple like human skull figures in among this rainbow artwork, but this is the only like actual like brown lion face. So it really stands out amongst all the other like psychedelic rainbow patterns. You can actually like stare into the face of this Strength card. So I really like how it just stares right back at you and kind of almost affirms that personal inner strength that the Strength card can represent. So I really like that, even though it sticks out from the rest of the deck. The next cards that I found kind of go all in a set So they're misfit from the rest of the deck, I guess, but they sort of make sense together. So these three, the King of Swords, the Hanged Man, and the Eight of Swords, they all have these very prominent black and white spirals. So the rest of the deck is entirely like rainbow psychedelic patterns, very minimal black and white in any of them. So these three really stand out when they appear because of those bold black and white spirals. But I really like how the artist incorporated these into the deck, because specifically for the Eight of Swords, I see it as like this mental, like Twilight, what's the Twilight Zone sort of mental conflict. So you're like within your own mind and trapped in this spiral of the Eight of Swords. For the Hanged Man, I really like it being on there because that's also kind of a mental card of being kind of turned upside down and looking at things from a different perspective. So when you have this stark black and white image on the table with a bunch of other rainbow cards, it really makes you focus on, okay, what is the Hanged Man telling me to look at instead of maybe the normal reading in this case. And then the King of Swords having the spirals is again like that mental fog, or that mental like challenge that you're going through. And this being two of these, or actually four of these spirals, there's two little ones up there on the King's sword, kind of shows that like this king is in control and has learned all the lessons and knows his thoughts and knows how to use his thoughts to get things done and communicate with everybody around him. So the spirals kind of work together in these cards, all to kind of have that mental aspect, but they definitely stand out from the rest of the deck. The next deck I went through was the Eldritch Overload Tarot. So I have 3 cards from this one. The first card I'm going to show is the Ace of Wands. I'll kind of move it around a little bit so you can see the edges really have the shimmering, and then the flames have the shimmering like the rest of the deck. But this particular card stands out because the main central image, like all of this area that I'm tracing around right now, there's none of that holographic sparkle. Almost every other card has drastic sparkle and highlighted areas throughout the center image of the card, and this one really stands out as a very matte finish card, a very kind of quote-unquote plain image compared to the rest of the deck. So it definitely stands out as a misfit card to me, that it kind of challenges my mind of why did the artist make this intention of having a matte finish on the entire card instead of the sparkles. And for the Ace of Wands, I think that really works out because it's kind of like that inspiration to act and do something, and it's kind of like up to you to make the choice to go do it. And you can't like rely on the rest of the kind of like wow factor of the deck kind of to make that choice for you. So these flames are kind of that initial spark and that initial like creativity, but then the rest of it is kind of left blank from the sparkles to kind of give it to the reader, in my opinion, of this is up to you to make that step and take advantage of this Ace of Wands energy. So at least that's how I kind of read it. So the next misfit card from that same Eldritch Overload deck is the Sun card. So as you can see on this one, there's a lot more sparkle throughout the entire image. But this one really stands out because this specific character feels very fiery, very deserty, obviously very sunny and warm, being the Sun card, but it doesn't feel very electronic and cyberpunk and things like that, which is what the deck is mostly based on. So this character to me kind of feels out of place in the rest of this deck, but I do really like how it is the Sun card, because that's kind of the spark of creativity, sort of like the Ace of Wands that I just talked about, but kind of this overall joyfulness, abundance, passion for life, things like that in the Sun card. And this kind of could read as a kind of foil to the rest of the deck that is kind of on the dark and gloomy side of like what could happen if technology takes over the world or electronics take over the world or your mind. So this kind of fiery passion out in the middle of nowhere energy is a very sun energy in comparison to the rest of this deck. So I do really like this card, even though it, again, is a misfit. And lastly, from the Eldritch Overload deck, I chose the Seven of Potions. I'll move it around so we can see some of the sparkle. This is the Seven of Potions, or the Seven of Cups. So kind of like the other two cards I showed, this isn't very apparent that the deck is more geared towards electronics and technology and futuristic cyberpunk artwork. This is a very almost like modern day typical thing with all these different cosmetics or medication options to take care of yourself. So that fits with the Seven of Cups or Seven of Potions, definitely, that you have all these different options to take care of yourself or do self-care or give a little zhuzh to yourself. So you have all these different options and you kind of have to pick the best one that works for you at the time. So the Seven of Potions still reads in that way, but it does stand out not being as cyberpunk or electronic from the rest of the deck. The next deck I chose was the Art of Adventure Tarot, and this is the star card from that deck. This is the only card in the deck that has a green alien figure. It was kind of hard to find a standout or a misfit in this deck because it's a very strange world. All the people or kind of aliens in this deck have these springy, twisty limbs, as you can see a little bit. But this is the only figure, or maybe only like humanoid figure, that is green. So it really stands out as kind of a misfit or a difference in this deck that I found. But again, I like how this is on the star card, because it kind of takes that star energy and is like, take care of yourself. And maybe this person is like Mother Nature or like part of the world that they are taking care of and focusing on. And that kind of can like give you hope for the future if you like take care of yourself and the world around you, or even just focus on other people doing that, can give you hope for the future and kind of the star energy of looking towards a new positive thing in your life. So I kind of see this person as maybe part of that environmental sort of meaning of the star card. At least that's how I read it. All right, the next deck that I chose cards from was the Sasuraibito Tarot. The first card I'm going to show quickly is the star card again. And of course, this is a very different, non-traditional version of the star card because they have a astronaut kind of in the middle of outer space, kind of around a galaxy, floating away from Earth. So it's almost like the exact opposite of the one I just showed. So it really stands out in contrast to the rest of the deck, which is very, I know a word to describe it regularly is an intimate deck. So all the pictures are kind of up close and personal on the things happening, or the humans in them are very like face and shoulders a lot of the time. So this card really stands out being like a broader perspective of taking a step back and kind of focusing on other things other than the day-to-day minutia that the rest of the deck is talking about. So I like this interpretation of the star card. I've seen the astronaut as the hanged man in a couple decks, and I think even the hermit in a couple decks, being kind of like away from the world. But I really like how the star card is the astronaut in this one. It kind of gives that step back energy, maybe like focus on yourself, even though like you might be the only one in your area or something like that. So yeah, another misfit card. I don't want to go too deep into these cards, but that's another misfit that I do like the interpretation of. Here's the King of Pentacles. Most of the human figures in this deck are shown like drawn normally. You can see their faces, you can see the clothes that they're wearing, you can see tattoos on them, you can see details about their body and what they're doing. But in this card, obviously, it is the silhouette of the person standing there. So this one stands out for that reason, but it also, I like how it reads as the King of Pentacles, that the silhouette and the earth are all one. And so they've like become each other and are so connected and intertwined that this person has a super solid base of health and earthly energy. They are financially stable. They have all of that typical earthly knowledge and stability of the King of Pentacles. And it reads really well, even though it is a different or misfit card from the rest of the deck. And lastly, from the Sasuraibito Tarot is the Ten of Cups. So this one stands out because a lot of the other ones have either human full figures on them, or there's a scene with like multiple people or characters or something like that. This one, you can see the feet down here at the bottom of the fire, but it's more of a pippish Ten of Cups, which is different than a lot of the other cards in this deck. So I really like how it stands out, and also it stands out because it's a different interpretation from like the typical Rider-Waite-Smith Ten of Cups. So it still gives that family energy, that gathering around, sharing emotions, celebrating each other maybe. I know where I grew up, we had a lot of parties in high school or college that got a little crazy with the drinking. So it kind of gives that like camaraderie energy, family, chosen family energy, that you're just kind of celebrating your emotions and confident in what's going on around you. All right, the next deck I chose is a pretty popular one. I haven't heard too many people talk about it lately, but it is the Seers Tarot. So the Tower card specifically stood out to me as a quote-unquote misfit card in this deck, because most of the other cards in this deck are very like free-flowing people. I want to say like give like a hippie vibe almost. They're kind of loving life, kind of doing all different things, but it's a lot of people. And most of the cards, if not all of them that I can think of at the moment, have people on them, and this one obviously doesn't. It's just an animal card. It has a squirrel and some butterflies getting hit by lightning on this tree, and obviously that's what the tower is a sudden disruption of everything around you and kind of breaking down that structure that you've established. So it reads really well as a tower card, but I just have to figure out kind of how it fits in with the rest of the deck, where it separates itself from the people. But that's kind of, that can also be read in a way that maybe this tower is breaking that cycle of like relying on the people around you, or maybe a person has hurt you, or maybe your boss fired you or something big like that in the tower card. So it's kind of like get away from the people that are doing these massive changes to you and kind of upsetting your structure, and kind of refocus on the stability of nature. This card doesn't show stable nature, but maybe it's telling you to focus on the nature instead of the human aspect around you. So I don't know, just kind of free flowing my interpretations at the moment, but I do still, again, like this card even though it's a misfit. I know I keep saying that, but I want to be clear that I'm giving a spotlight to these cards instead of like saying why they're bad or something like that. So here's another one from the Seers Tarot. This is the Page of Cups. So this is a silly card, which the Page of Cups is, but it's the only card that is kind of almost fantastical in this deck. All the other ones have pretty realistic images on them. It's definitely its own world, but it has pretty realistic, or people doing realistic things or whatever. But the Page of Cups here, obviously he's seeing his feet, or another person's feet, but I assume it's his feet, above him, and there's a pig flying, and the cup is now above him instead of at his feet, and he's just kind of inspired and wondering and curious and allowing his mind to go to these silly places. And so it's a very great Page of Cups card. It just stands out as being like the most fantastical fantasy card of the deck. The next one is the Page of Swords. This one really stands out, kind of in the whole suit of the swords, because the suit is a very dark, kind of dark images and like grays and blacks and dark blues and things like that. So this one stands out because it's like this gold and green background for most of the card, and it gives a very like positive, like inspirational, kind of letting your mind go to new places energy, which is definitely the Page of Swords as I read it. But it does stand out from the rest of the swords because it's brighter, and also a lot of the swords have crows or ravens, whatever the bird is, on the rest of them, signifying the sword specifically. So this being the Page of Swords, it doesn't have those crows, and it kind of stands out from the rest of the suit. But I like it as the Page of Swords because it's like that new idea, that new, those new thoughts, those rebellious thoughts that may change the winds around you, or kind of letting your mind go to new places with the winds. And lastly, from the Light Seers Tarot, I chose the Ten of Swords. So basically, just like I said with the Page of Swords, this card stands out from the rest of the suit because it is so bright, and it's very like tan and white and yellow. The rest of the suit is very dark and gloomy, and specifically this stands out because the Ten of Swords is normally the darkest, gloomiest card in the sword suit. So this one really kind of gives that contrast and gives that stepping into a new light, even though you have like broken down to the point of being totally done with your situation. Obviously, typically in the Ten of Swords, we see 10 swords stabbing a person into the ground. So this one is a more empowering and kind of looking forward Ten of Swords than most of the ones we see. So I really like that in the Light Seers deck, of seeing that positive in one of the darker cards of the deck. All right, the next deck I looked through was the This Might Hurt deck. This was kind of a difficult one to find a misfit as well, because the intention of this deck is to be very diverse and unique in every card, and all the people are different and all the ages are different, which is what makes this deck so awesome. But this card specifically stood out because it is obviously like the Egyptian god making the decision of weighing your heart versus a feather, and whether you go on to the afterlife or not, kind of that whole belief system or story. But this really stands out from the rest of the deck because the rest is very much more down to earth, relatable, modern, very people forward, humans, very day-to-day activities like writing or bicycling or motorcycling or riding in a car or things like that. Just very down to earth, day-to-day relatable activities. And this card is not that. It is a very spiritual, like god of making this judgment about the afterlife. So it really stands out, but of course that fits with the judgment theme of making that kind of final ascendance into what's the word, like enlightenment or completion of the world card. So it definitely fits with the judgment meaning, and it just kind of sticks out from the rest of the deck being a little more spiritual, I would say. All right, the next deck I chose, I have two more, so second to last. This is one of my favorite decks, the Tarot of the Divine Masculine. You've probably seen it a bunch on this channel if you've been watching. Warning, there is some nudity in the cards, so if that offends you, please click off now. But this first card is the Justice card, and this one comes up for me almost more than any other card in the deck, I feel like. I don't know why, what that says, whatever. I'm trying to work through that myself, but it is a very beautiful and almost haunting image of this person stepping off of this podium. They have the sword on their side, and they have the scales in their hand, just like a typical Justice card would. But what makes this card stand out is that the entire deck is based on the Divine Masculine. Most of the other cards have masculine presenting figures, or at least have even renamed characters. Like the queens are renamed. Is it the Protector? It might be the Protector of the suit. So it's all geared towards the Divine Masculine. And in this card, it's very clear that this person is presenting as female or presenting with female breasts. And it's not censored. It's just out there for everyone to see. But the males, or the people that are presenting as male down here, are kind of cowering or covering up themselves. So this is a very powerful card for me. It's kind of like... I've thought about this card way too much, but it really stands out to me in this deck as being kind of a foil to the rest of the deck, which is so masculine. It's kind of this gender bending or gender empowering, I guess, card of, it doesn't matter what your body is, you can step into your masculinity or femininity in the ways you want. And justice kind of is that like ultimate decision, or kind of like lets you do that, I guess. Like you're allowed to make that choice or something like that. So this card is just super powerful and really stands out. I could say a whole lot more about it, but I'll kind of leave it at that. It's a beautiful card, but it's kind of a misfit because it really empowers that femininity, or at least that female presenting figure in the foreground. The next card is kind of a silly reason it sticks out. This is the Seven of Pentacles. And the reason I chose this one, it's a very Seven of Pentacles card. This person is gardening. This person is kind of taking a break and admiring their work. But in the foreground, you see this little cherub baby. They are drinking wine and urinating into the garden. So it's just such a strange figure to have on this card. It just stands out and I guess catches my eye as weird or something to think about every time I pick this card. So I do enjoy it. It makes me laugh. It's just kind of silly and kind of awkward when it comes up in a reading, but it's something to talk about and something to look into, of like just kind of using what you have, and in this case sort of like recycling the wine into urine or something like that. I'm not sure, but it's just a weird one that stuck out to me. The next card, I have a few from this deck because they're kind of all misfits, but they sort of fit with the world too. So this is the Ten of Pentacles. The rest of the humans in this deck are very like shaded, like tan and normal skin color, I would say. Even if they're different races, it's like normal skin colors. But in this one, these three people specifically are black and white or gray. And it's a very different feeling for this deck. These people are also all fully clothed, which is pretty unique in this deck. There is a lot of nudity in this deck that kind of emphasizes masculine forms, I guess. But this card shows them all dressed and kind of formally dressed to a point. Some of them more than others, I guess. But so this card just shows that like kind of riches, shows that financial stability of long-term success, I guess. With the fully clothed, they are on this brick pathway. They have their dogs. They have a community around them. And I also like this card because I believe, I'm not positive on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this represents actually a statue that exists in real life. And it's something to do with, I believe, something to do with like the queer liberation movement or like LGBT rights. I can't remember the name of the statue and I couldn't find it in my initial research of trying to do this video. but I believe it has something to do with that statue that exists. So it kind of shows the stone figures of the statue as part of the Ten of Pentacles of kind of a chosen family rather than a established like generational family throughout the ages, which a normal Ten of Pentacles kind of shows. All right, 2 more cards from that deck. This one stands out as well. This is the Ace of Cups. This one stands out because being the ace, it normally only has 1 figure on it or just a cup or something like that. But this one has 2 figures, clearly kind of embracing or almost kissing or something like that. But they're kind of like giving their energy to each other under the water, or one might be saving the other under the water, or spreading that love to the other one. So it does still give that Ace of Cups. It just stands out as almost against the traditional reading more than stands out from the deck, but of having the 2 figures instead of 1. And lastly from this deck, the Knight of Swords stands out to me. This one gives me very like BDSM kink energy, with the person as the horse, all the way to the tail and the like bridle in its mouth. So it gives that very different like misfit energy, I guess. It stands out from the rest of the deck being like kind of the kinky card in a way. And just the posture of the figure on top of the horse person is kind of like very dominant and commanding, which the Knight of Swords is. They know what they want. They are going into battle. They don't care what anybody thinks of their kinks or their differences or anything like that. They are going into battle. They know what they want to do, maybe without thinking enough, but they are going to do what they want to do, and they are proud of themselves, which is kind of shown with this rainbow flag that is wrapped around this person. So it's still a powerful card. It's still a powerful Knight of Swords card. It just stands out as kind of the kink card of this deck. So I wanted to show that. All right, the last deck I'm going to show, and this is actually the one that inspired this video. The last card I'm going to show kind of inspired this entire video, but this is the New Voice Tarot. So this is the Tower card from that deck. This one stands out because it's kind of a different interpretation of the Tower. It shows a pile of books and these people falling from the books. It also shows money being splattered all around, but it still has the crown, and it has the people falling, and it has like kind of the dust around it. So it's a very Tower card, but it stands out from the rest of the deck because it's not very traditional. And this deck very much relies on traditional symbolism and colors and kind of redrawing or reinterpreting the original artwork, which I love about the deck. But this one stands out as being different. Specifically this like baby hand. I still haven't exactly figured out why that is the thing, like knocking it down or making a conflict. But it's just a cool, different choice that this artist made to be a stack of books and money and knocking everything down. Another thing to point out in this card is the comedy tragedy masks of like theater shows or theater productions. So that's kind of part of them, like their masks are falling off or something like that with the Tower card. So very different one. And then this is actually the card that inspired this entire video. It's also from the New Voice Tarot. It's the Eight of Wands. The rest of this deck is very detailed, very full of scenery and detail and people and colors and everything. You can kind of see that on the Tower card here. It's just busy. There's a lot of color. There's a lot of shadows and light parts, and everything is so line work and everything. But then we have this Eight of Wands that just kind of stands on its own as obviously 8 shooting stars in the night sky. There is limited details in this card. It is just stars in the sky, and it really stands out from the rest of this deck and just kind of made me think of these different misfit cards. So, of course, this looks very similar to the traditional Eight of Wands. It has the 8 streaks going through the sky, just like the 8 wands in the original RWS artwork. But it's at night, which is, I think, really cool. And it has those shooting stars, which is typically thought of like make a wish on the shooting star, or kind of spark that energy in yourself to do something. Just do it, go forward, be creative. Yeah, just 8 of Wands, go do it energy. So this is the card that sparked it all, and is the last misfit card that I'm going to show. So I'll kind of put them all back out here, and I kind of want to put them all together because a collection of misfits that I have found in my life is kind of my favorite group of people, or cards in this case. So I really like how all these cards add to their deck, being different from the rest of the deck. They make up a collection of just interesting ideas and just add to the overall readings when I get these decks. So I hope overall you enjoyed this exploration of tarot card misfits, and if you'd like to do this yourself, I would love to see your videos, so please tag me or use the hashtag tarot card misfits, and I will try to watch as many as I can. I hope this tag takes off because I really like seeing the different cards in people's decks. A lot of people show the same cards or flip through just the majors or things like that, but I really want to see the unique cards that make decks kind of different from what normally people show. So I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, this is life. This is what I'm talking about. You manage to be happy for 5 seconds, and something starts ringing.